What you are about to hear are some verses from the Lankavatara Sutra, which describe the doctrine of the so-called Vijnanas, which is a Sanskrit term which refers to the 8 consciousnesses, which is a classification developed in the tradition of the Yogacara school of Buddhism. They enumerate the 5 senses, supplemented by the mind, defilements of the mind, and finally the fundamental storehouse consciousness, which is the basis of the other 7. After the recitation of these verses, I'll give more explanation of the Vijnanas based on primarily Wikipedia articles, subsequent to which I will recite the verses again in a slightly more elaborated form, along with D.T. Suzuki's caveats regarding how we should view such a theory. At that time, the Blessed One recited the following verses. Like waves that rise on the ocean, stirred by the wind, dancing and without interruption, the alaya ocean, in a similar manner, is constantly stirred by the winds of objectivity, and is seen dancing about with the Vijnanas, which are the waves of multiplicity. Dark blue, red, and other colors, with salt, conch shell, milk, honey, fragrance of fruits and flowers, and rays of sunlight. They are neither different nor not different. The relation is like that between the ocean and its waves. So are the 7 Vijnanas joined with the Citta, or mind. As the waves in their variety are stirred on the ocean, so in the alaya is produced the variety of what is known as the Vijnanas. The Cittas, Manas, and Vijnanas are discriminated as regards their form, but in substance the 8 are not to be separated from one another, for there is neither qualified nor qualifying. As there is no distinction between the ocean and its waves, so in the Citta there is no evolution of the Vijnanas. Karma is accumulated by the Citta, reflected upon by the Manas, and recognized by the mano-vijnana, and the visible world is discriminated by the 5 Vijnanas. Varieties of color such as dark blue, etc., are presented to our Vijnana. Tell me, great Muni, how there are these varieties of color like waves in the ocean. There are no such varieties of colors in the waves. It is for the sake of the simple-minded that the Citta is said to be evolving as regards form. There is no such evolving in the Citta itself, which is beyond comprehension. Where there is comprehension, there is that which comprehends, as in the case of the waves and the ocean. Body, property, and abode are presented as such to our Vijnanas, and thus they are seen as evolving in the same way as are the waves. The ocean is manifestly seen dancing in the state of waveness. How is it that the evolving of the alaya is not recognized by the intellect even as the ocean is? That the alaya is compared to the ocean is only for the sake of the discriminating intellect of the ignorant. The likeness of the waves in motion is only brought out by way of illustration. When the sun rises, it shines impartially on people high and low. So thou, who art the light of the world, shouldst announce the truth to the ignorant. How is it that in establishing thyself in the Dharma thou announcest not the truth? If the truth is announced by me, the truth is not in the mind. As the waves appear instantly on the ocean, or images in a mirror or a dream, so the mind is reflected in its own sense fields. Owing to a deficiency in conditions, the evolution of the Vijnanas takes place by degrees. The function of the mano-vijnana is to recognize, and that of the manas is to reflect upon. While to the 5 Vijnanas the actual world presents itself, There is no gradation when one is in a state of collectedness, like unto a master of painting or his pupils who arrange colors to produce a picture. I teach. The picture is not in the colors, nor in the canvas, nor in the plate. In order to make it attractive to all beings, a picture is presented in colors. What one teaches transgresses, for the truth is beyond words. Establishing myself in the Dharma, I preach the truth for the yogins. The truth is the state of self-realization and is beyond categories of discrimination. I teach it to the sons and daughters of the victorious. The teaching is not meant for the ignorant. What is seen as multitudinous is a vision which exists not. The teaching itself is thus variously given, subject to transgression. The teaching is no teaching whatever if it is not to the point in each case. According to the nature of a disease, the healer gives its medicine. Even so, the Buddhas teach beings in accordance with their mentalities. This is indeed not a mental realm to be reached by the philosophers. What is taught by the leaders is the realm of self-realization. So, all surviving schools of Buddhist thought accept in common the existence of the first 6 primary consciousnesses. The first 6 of these primary consciousnesses comprise the 5 sensory faculties, together with mental consciousness, which is counted as the 6th. The alaya-vijnana doctrine, or storehouse consciousness, arose on the Indian subcontinent and gained its place in a distinctly Yogacara system from 100 to 400 CE. The 6th consciousness, which is mind or mental consciousness, is from the Sanskrit mano-vijnana. The 7th consciousness, representing defilements of the mind or deluded awareness, is translated from the Sanskrit manas. And the 8th so-called storehouse consciousness, or all-encompassing foundation consciousness, is translated from the Sanskrit alaya-vijnana. The Yogacara school gives a detailed explanation of the workings of the mind and the way it constructs the reality which we experience. It is meant to be an explanation of experience rather than a system of ontology. Vasubandhu is considered to be the systematizer of Yogacara thought. The alaya-vijnana, or the all-encompassing foundation consciousness, forms the base consciousness, or causal consciousness. According to the traditional interpretation, the other 7 consciousnesses are evolving or transforming consciousnesses originating in this base consciousness. According to the Lankavatara Sutra and the schools of Chan or Zen Buddhism, the alaya-vijnana is identical with the Tathagata-garbha and is fundamentally pure. The equation of alaya-vijnana and Tathagata-garbha was contested. It was seen as something akin to the Hindu notions of Atman, or permanent invariant self. Many Tathagata-garbha texts, in fact, argue for the acceptance of selfhood as a sign of higher accomplishment. According to Walpola Rahula, all the elements of Yogacara storehouse consciousness are already found in the Pali Canon. He writes that the 3 layers of the mind, Citta, Manas, and Vijnana, as presented by Asanga, are also mentioned in the Pali Canon. Quote, "Thus we can see that the Vijnana represents the simple reaction or response of the sense organs when they come in contact with external objects. This is the uppermost or superficial aspect or layer of the Vijnana skandha. Manas, represents the aspect of its mental functioning, thinking, reasoning, conceiving ideas, etc. Citta, which is here called alaya-vijnana, represents the deepest, finest, and subtlest aspect or layer of the aggregate of consciousness. It contains all the traces or impressions of the past actions and all good and bad future possibilities. A core teaching of Chan or Zen Buddhism describes the transformation of the 8 consciousnesses into the 4 wisdoms. In this teaching, Buddha's practice is to turn the light of awareness around, from misconceptions regarding the nature of reality as being external, to kensho, or quote, directly seeing one's own nature. Thus, the 8th consciousness is transformed into the great perfect mirror wisdom, the 7th consciousness into the equality or universal nature wisdom, the 6th consciousness into the profound observing wisdom, and the 1st to 5th consciousnesses into the all-performing perfection of action wisdom. With respect to the Manas-Vijnana, it is the 7th of the 8 consciousnesses, as taught in Yogacara and Zen Buddhism, the higher consciousness, or intuitive consciousness, that on the one hand localizes experience through thinking, and on the other hand universalizes experience through intuitive perception of the universal mind of alaya-vijnana. Manas-Vijnana is not to be confused with mano-vijnana, which is the 6th consciousness. According to D.T. Suzuki, who uses the term manas rather than Manas-Vijnana for the 7th consciousness, the Lankavatara Sutra presents the Zen view of the 8 consciousnesses rather than the Yogacara view. In his introduction to his translation of the Lankavatara Sutra, he clarifies the distinction between the overlapping terms, quote, to begin with Vijnana. Vijnana is the faculty of distinguishing or discerning or judging. When an object is presented before the eye, it is perceived and judged as a red apple or a piece of white linen. The faculty of doing this is called eye-vijnana. In the same way, there are ear-vijnana for sound, nose-vijnana for odor, tongue-vijnana for taste, body-vijnana for touch, and thought-vijnana or mano-vijnana for ideas. Altogether, 6 forms of vijnana for distinguishing the various aspects of world, external and internal. Of these 6 vijnanas, the mano-vijnana is the most important, as it is directly related to an inner faculty known as manas. Manas roughly corresponds to mind as an organ of thought, but in fact it is more than that, for it is also a strong power of attaching itself to the result of thinking. The latter may even be considered subordinate to this power of attachment. The manas first wills, then it discriminates to judge. To judge is to divide, and this dividing ends in viewing existence dualistically. Hence, the manas's tenacious attachment to the dualistic interpretation of existence. Willing and thinking are inextricably woven into the texture of manas. The citta is a storehouse where the seeds of all thoughts and deeds are accumulated and stored up. When it is used in the general sense, it means mind, mentation, ideas, including the activities of manas and mano-vijnana, and also of the Vijnanas, while specifically it is a synonym of alaya-vijnana in its relative aspects, and distinguishable from all the rest of the mental faculties. When, however, it is used in the form of Cittamatra, or mind only, it acquires still another connotation. We can say that the citta appears here in its highest possible sense, for it is then neither simply mentation nor intellection, nor perception as a function of consciousness. It is identifiable with the alaya in its absolute sense. Alaya is a store where things are hoarded for future use. Strictly speaking, the alaya is not a vijnana, has no discerning power in it. The alaya is perfectly neutral, indifferent, and does not offer to give judgments. Okay, well, there's a lot of terminology, and it can be pretty confusing because some of the terms overlap in their meaning. But trying to transcend the specific implications of the various terms and of the descriptions provided, let us recall what T.T. Suzuki emphasizes in his studies in the Lankavatara Sutra when he says, "The main point we must never forget in the study of the Lankavatara is that it is not written as a philosophical treatise to establish a definite system of thought, but is to discourse on a certain religious experience. What philosophy or speculation it offers is only incidental as an introduction or as an intellectual interpretation necessitated by the rational nature of humanity. This latter phase of religious experience may be more predominant in Buddhism than in some other religions, but it is not for us to overlook the essence of the matter for the sake of its more or less important accessories, however inevitable they may be in the understanding of it. As was definitely stated, the principal theme of the Lankavatara is Pratyatamaya Jnana Gokara, the state of consciousness in which the inmost truth is directly presented in one's mind. This being an immediate perception of the truth, it cannot be imparted to others by means of logic, but without it, the perception itself ceases to be operative, which is the same thing as not existing at all or being unreal. The experience itself is without content and must be given to it by the intellect to make it workable in our social living. The psychology of the Lankavatara is also to be treated thus, that is to say, its doctrine of, quote, mind only, or Cittamatra, with all its accompaniments, is meant to explain the mental experience of the Bodhisattva. We have always to bear in mind this subordinate position of psychology, or logic, or metaphysics in the teaching of the Lankavatara. With that important caveat stated, let me now recite a little more elaborated version of those same verses that I began with from Suzuki's Studies volume. As the waves of the ocean, depending on the wind, are stirred up and roll on dancing without interruption, so the alaya flood, constantly stirred up by the wind of individuation, rolls on dancing with the waves of the various Vijnanas. As dark blue, red, and other colors with salt, conch shell, milk and honey, fragrance with fruits and flowers, rays of light with the sun, they are neither different nor not different from one another. So the 7 Vijnanas, which are the waves of the ocean, rise in conjunction with mind, or Citta. Manifold are the waves evolved in the ocean. Likewise, indeed, the alaya sets in motion a variety of Vijnanas. Citta, Manas, and mano-vijnana are spoken of as different because of appearances. In fact, the 8 Vijnanas have no specific qualifying marks. There is neither that which qualifies nor that which is qualified. As there is no differentiation in the ocean's waves, so no modification obtains in Citta as regards the Vijnanas. Citta gathers up karma. Manas inspects. The Vijnana distinguishes, and the 5 Vijnanas discriminate the visible world. Mahamati asked, "Dark blue, red, and such like are known to be the Vijnana of mankind. Tell me, O Mahamuni, how a likeness is obtained between waves and mind." The Buddha answered, "Dark blue and red and such like are indeed not in the waves. It is for the sake of the ignorant that the mind is described as evolving due to appearances. There is no evolving in mind. Mind in itself is free from what is perceived. Where there is that which is perceived, there is that which perceives. The case is the same with the waves. Body, property, and abode are known to be the Vijnana of mankind, in which an evolution is thus observed. The analogy holds good with the waves. Mahamati said, "The ocean with its dancing waves is discernible, and why is not the evolution of the alaya likewise perceived by intelligence?" The Buddha replied, "In accordance with the intelligence and discrimination of the ignorant, the alaya is compared to the ocean, and the likeness of waves and the evolution of mind is pointed out by a simile." Mahamati requested, "Like unto the sun that illuminates equally above and below, thou art indeed the light of the world. Announce the truth for the sake of the ignorant. Thou hast already begun the exposition of the law. Why dost thou not announce the truth?" The Buddha then replied, "Even when there is a man who discourses on the truth, there is in his mind no special object to be called truth. As the waves are stirred on the ocean, as images are seen in a mirror, in a dream, simultaneously, so is the mind in its own field. To discriminate objects, an evolution of Vijnanas takes place in succession. The Vijnana distinguishes, and Manas again reflects. The visible world manifests itself to the five Vijnanas. There is no successive evolution when mind is in a state of collectedness. As a painter or his disciple arrays his colors in order to produce a painting, so do I preach. The picture is not in the color, nor in the canvas, nor in the plate. In order to attract all beings, the picture is produced in colors. Preaching may err, but the truth is beyond words. Being the master of all the doctrines, I preach the truth to the devotees, and the truth is to be attained by an inner perception, as it goes beyond both the distinguished objects and the distinguishing subject. I preach for the sake of sons and daughters of the Buddha. This preaching is not for the ignorant. The manifoldness of things is seen as like maya, and exists not. Preaching is thus done in various ways, subject to errors. When the preaching is not good in accord with the mentality of the hearer, it is then for him no preaching. A good physician administers medicine according to his patients. So indeed do the Buddhas discourse in accordance with the mental capacity of beings. The masters thus preach the state of consciousness attained by their inner perception, which does not belong to the realm of the philosophers. And now, going back to Suzuki's comments, he says, according to the Lankavatara, the mind, inclusive of Citta, Manas, and the other 6 Vijnanas, is in its original nature quiet, pure, and above the dualism of subject and object. But here appears the principle of particularization known as Vishaya, which comes from the root vish, meaning to act or to work. And with the rise of this wind of action, the waves are agitated over the tranquil surface of the mind. It is now differentiated or revolves into 8 Vijnanas, alaya, manas, mano-vijnana, and the 5 senses. And simultaneously with this evolution, the whole universe comes into existence with its multitudinous forms and with its endless entanglements. The conception of the alaya-vijnana plays a chief, though silent, role in the evolution of the idealistic philosophy of the Lankavatara. It is often called simply Citta or Tathagata-garbha. Tathagata-garbha, which is another name for the alaya, is also a sort of storeroom or receptacle where the seeds of Tathagatahood are retained and matured, It has a religious shade of meaning in contradistinction to the alaya-vijnana, which is a more philosophical term. The Tathagata-garbha is the womb where the Tathagatas are conceived and matured. And we are all possible Tathagatas, except that we sit generally bound like mummies by the heavy intellectual and affective coverings. These two obstructions lie in our way of attaining supreme enlightenment. The intellectual one may not be so difficult to overcome as far as the intellect alone is concerned, as it is detached altogether from the influence of the passions. But these passions constitute the very root of personality, from the hardest knot to be untied by all earnest followers of Buddhism. The Buddhists, however, have no desire to extinguish all the affective factors that make up the human heart. What they mean when they say that one should extirpate all the passions, or klesha, in order to attain perfect freedom, is that our passions, as they are generally harbored, are deeply rooted in the idea of self and inseparably joined with all the egotistical impulses, and that therefore they should be disjoined and set free for the working of the Maha-karuna, or great compassionate heart, which in conjunction with prajna, or supreme wisdom, makes up the life of the Mahayana Buddhist. Namo Mita Butch. Namo Mita Butch. Namo Mita Butch. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami, Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami, Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami. May I be free from enmity and danger. May I be free from mental suffering. May I be free from physical suffering. May I be happy. May my relatives and friends and fellow meditators be free from enmity and danger, be free from mental suffering, be free from physical suffering. May they be happy. In the entire universe, whatever beings that move on earth, on water, or in air, may they be free from enmity and danger, be free from mental suffering, be free from physical suffering. May they be happy. Namo Mita Butsu. Namo Mita Butsu. Namo Mita Butsu.